All right, so today we're going to kind of dive into something I think that's on a lot of people's minds when it comes to education, and that is standardized tests.
Yeah.
We've got a ton of sources here, research articles, policy papers, even firsthand accounts from, educators and parents.
Right.
And our mission today is kind of try to figure out, how we can make this whole testing process less stressful
Yeah.
and more effective for everyone involved, not just the students,
Right.
but the teachers, the administrators, the families too.
Yeah, I think what I find so fascinating about all these sources is just the emphasis on a truly collaborative approach.
Okay.
It's not just about raising scores.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where students can actually learn and grow from the experience.
So it's not just teaching to the test, but teaching how to learn and grow through the process.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, I'm seeing a lot here about the role of administrators,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like it goes way beyond just scheduling the test and ordering pencils.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sources really highlight how administrators set the tone for the entire testing culture.
Okay.
One district in the study actually implemented this really innovative professional development program for their teachers, focused on how to integrate test-taking skills into daily lessons. So instead of cramming right before the test, it becomes a natural part of the learning process.
So it's almost like weaving it into the fabric of the curriculum.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What I'm also picking up on here is this takes a lot of pressure off teachers too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of feeling like they have to suddenly switch gears and teach to the test, it's more of an ongoing process.
Yeah, it's building those skills over time.
Right.
And, it's not just about the academic side of things.
Okay.
Several sources talk about the importance of addressing test anxiety, especially for students who might already feel stressed or overwhelmed. One school in the study actually saw a significant decrease in anxiety levels after they introduced mindfulness exercises right before the test.
Wow.
Imagine, taking a few minutes to just do some deep breathing or visualization techniques.
Right.
It could really help students feel more centered and focused.
Okay. That's something I wish I had known back in my school days. Test anxiety was definitely a real thing for me.
Yeah,
I'm also seeing here that tailoring support for different learners is crucial,
absolutely.
especially for students with special needs or who are English language learners.
Yeah, equity is a huge theme running through all these sources.
Okay.
And one of the articles highlights a school that completely revamped their testing environment for students with sensory processing issues.
Okay.
Things like dimming the lights, providing noise-canceling headphones, even using alternative seating arrangements.
Wow.
These small changes made a huge difference in those students' ability to focus and perform their best.
It sounds like they really took the time to understand the needs of individual students and create a testing environment that set them up for success.
Exactly.
But, it's not just about what happens within the school walls, right?
Right.
The sources we have here also emphasize the crucial role parents play in this whole testing ecosystem.
Oh, it's definitely a team effort.
Yeah.
And communication is key.
Yeah.
The schools that had the most success with standardized testing were the ones that really made an effort to keep parents informed and involved.
Okay.
We're talking about clear communication, about test schedules and expectations workshops for parents on how to support learning at home, and even providing access to online resources and practice materials.
So it's about empowering parents to become active participants in their children's education, not just passive observers.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm actually really struck by how much emphasis these sources place on the role of non-instructional staff as well. We often think of testing as this teacher-centric process.
Yeah.
But it seems like everyone in the school community has a part to play.
Absolutely. Their contributions are often overlooked, but they're really essential to creating a smooth and supportive testing experience.
Okay.
Think about setting up testing rooms, ensuring the technology is working properly, providing accommodations for students with special needs.
Right.
These tasks often fall on the shoulders of non-instructional staff, and they play a critical role in making sure things run smoothly.
Yeah.
One study highlighted a school where the administrative staff actually went through training on how to administer tests and assist students with special needs.
That's a great example of how this collaborative approach really extends to every level of the school community. It's not just about the teachers and administrators, it's about everyone working together to create a positive and supportive environment for students.
Right.
And speaking of working together, let's talk about the often unsung heroes of the testing world, the central office staff. They tend to get a lot of flack for creating policies and mandates, but it seems like they actually have a much more collaborative role than we might realize.
Absolutely. The sources highlight the importance of these feedback loops between schools and the central office.
Okay.
They're not just handing down dictates from on high, they're actively gathering input from teachers and administrators to refine and improve the testing process.
That's a two-way street.
Exactly.
I'm seeing a lot here about how central office staff are using data from schools to inform policy decisions, provide targeted resources, and even design more effective professional development programs for educators.
Right. One district even implemented a system where teachers could submit feedback on specific test questions, and then that feedback was used to revise future versions of the test.
Wow.
It's a really interesting example of how collaboration can lead to continuous improvement.
That's impressive. It sounds like they're really committed to making the testing process as relevant and effective as possible. And that brings us back to this idea of a growth mindset, which I'm seeing pop up a lot in these sources.
It's a crucial concept.
Yeah.
It's about shifting the focus from just the results to the effort and the learning process.
Right.
Imagine if we could help students and parents see standardized tests not as these high-stakes judgments,
Yeah.
but as opportunities to identify areas for growth and celebrate progress.
That's a powerful reframing.
Yeah.
But how do we actually make that shift happen?
Right.
It's one thing to talk about a growth mindset, but how do we actually cultivate it in a system that often feels very results-oriented?
That's a great question, and it's something we're going to explore in more depth in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll look at some real-world examples of how schools and districts are successfully fostering a growth mindset around standardized testing.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that,
Yeah.
so stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be right back. One of the sources actually had this really compelling anecdote about a school that decided to totally revamp how they talked about standardized tests with students and parents.
Okay. I'm interested. Tell me more.
So instead of framing them as these big scary evaluations,
Right.
they started calling them learning checkpoints.
Learning checkpoints. I
Yeah.
like that. It sounds way less intimidating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they actually went even further.
Okay.
They held these workshops for parents, explaining how the test data would be used to personalize learning for each student.
Okay.
They even created these individualized student progress reports that focused on growth and areas for improvement
Okay.
rather than just a numerical score.
That's a really practical way to shift the focus from just the outcome to the process of
Right.
learning. I'm curious, though, did they see any changes in student attitudes towards the tests?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Teachers reported that students seemed less anxious and more engaged in the preparation process. And parents were more likely to view the tests as a valuable tool for understanding their child's strengths and areas for growth.
So it sounds like a win-win-win.
Yeah.
Students feel less pressure. Teachers have better data to inform their instruction.
Right.
And parents feel more involved in the process.
Exactly.
That's a great example of how a simple shift in perspective can make a big difference. But let's get real for a second. We all know that testing can be a controversial topic.
Yeah.
And there are some valid concerns out there. Some people might be thinking okay, this collaborative approach sounds great. But what about the argument that standardized tests are inherently biased or that they put too much pressure on students?
Those are all important points to consider. And, the sources don't shy away from these critiques at all.
Okay.
One of the researchers actually argues that standardized tests, while imperfect, can be a valuable tool for identifying and addressing achievement gaps,
Okay.
particularly for students from historically marginalized groups. But the key they emphasize is to use the data responsibly
Okay.
and to focus on providing equitable support to all students.
So it's not about ignoring the limitations of standardized testing, but rather using them as a starting point
Right.
for creating a more equitable and responsive education system.
Exactly.
I'm seeing a lot here about how some schools are using test data to identify areas where certain groups of students might need additional resources or support, like targeted tutoring programs or after-school learning opportunities.
Right. It's about looking beyond the numbers.
Okay.
And really understanding the stories behind the data.
Right.
And it's about making sure that resources are distributed equitably so that all students have the opportunity to succeed.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of collaboration, communication, and a growth mindset. But I'm wondering, are there any concrete examples of how all of this plays out in a real-world setting?
Absolutely. One of the sources profiles the school district that implemented what they call a testing support team. It was made up of teachers, administrators, counselors, and even parents.
Wow.
And this team meets regularly throughout the year to discuss testing logistics, share best practices for supporting students, and analyze data to identify areas for improvement.
Wow, that's a really comprehensive approach.
Yeah.
It sounds like they've really thought through all the different aspects of the testing process and how to make it a collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm.
And did it work?
Yeah, the results speak for themselves.
Okay.
The district saw significant improvements in student test scores, but more importantly,
Okay.
teachers reported feeling more supported and confident in their ability to prepare students for the tests, and parents felt more informed and involved in the process.
That's really encouraging to hear. It shows that this collaborative approach isn't just some idealistic theory.
Right.
It can actually lead to tangible results.
Yeah,
But I think it's important to acknowledge that this kind of systemic change takes time and effort.
absolutely.
It's not going to happen overnight.
No, it's a process.
But even small changes can make a big difference.
Yeah, one of the articles highlighted a school that simply decided to send out a weekly newsletter to parents
Okay.
with tips on how to support their children's learning at home.
Okay.
Things like, creating a designated study space, setting aside time for reading together, and even just talking to their kids about what they were learning in school.
Those are all great ideas, and they're things that any parent can do
Right.
regardless of their background or resources.
Exactly.
I think sometimes we overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Just creating a culture of open communication and support can go a long way.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's about fostering that sense of shared responsibility and understanding that everyone has a role to play in supporting student success.
As we're talking, I'm realizing that this whole deep dive into standardized testing has really shifted my own perspective.
Oh, yeah.
I used to think of it as this necessary evil, this high pressure hurdle that students just had to jump over.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way.
But now I'm seeing it more as an opportunity.
Nope.
An opportunity to create a more collaborative and supportive learning environment, to empower students and families, and to use data in a way that truly benefits all learners.
That's a really powerful insight, and it's exactly the kind of shift in thinking that we need to see if we want to create a more positive and productive testing culture.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm wondering, what are the key takeaways you hope our listener is walking away with?
Well, for me, I think the biggest takeaway is that we need to move away from this idea of standardized testing as this one-size-fits-all high-stakes evaluation
Yeah.
and start thinking about it more holistically.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen some really amazing examples of how schools and districts are using a more collaborative approach
Right.
to not only improve those test scores,
Yeah,
but also create a more supportive and equitable learning environment for all students.
absolutely. And if I had to kind of boil it down to one key message,
Okay.
it would be that standardized tests don't have to be the source of stress and anxiety.
Like, when we approach them with this collaborative spirit, a commitment to equity and a focus on growth, we can actually transform them into a valuable tool for learning and improvement.
That's a really powerful statement.
Yeah.
And it brings to mind that thought-provoking question you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
The one you wanted to leave our listener with.
Right, right. I'm curious, after diving deep into all these different perspectives on standardized testing, what role do you see yourself playing in creating a more positive and productive testing environment?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
It really challenges us to think about how we can make a difference,
right.
whether we're educators, parents, or even just concerned citizens who care about the future of education.
Exactly. If you're a teacher, maybe it's about, incorporating more of those test-taking strategies into your daily lessons, or finding creative ways to communicate with parents about their child's progress.
Right, and if you're a parent, maybe it's about advocating for more supportive testing policies at your child's school, or simply creating a more relaxed and encouraging learning environment at home.
Exactly. The possibilities are really endless.
Yeah.
But the key is to remember that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of testing.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
And I have to say, I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Me too.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the potential of standardized testing when it's approached with a collaborative spirit and a focus on growth.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey, and I hope our listener feels empowered to take what they've learned and make a positive impact in their own communities.
That's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of standardized testing.
of course.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those conversations flowing.